On the 5th of September, Sami Mokbel from the Daily Mail, a fairly reliable journalist in terms of Arsenal news from my experience, wrote the news that he understands Mikel Arteta is giving serious thought to dropping Aaron Ramsdale for David Raya in order for the Spaniard to have a prolonged stint in the first team after the international break. Cue meltdown. In many ways, this shouldn't be surprising. As discussed in my previous video about Raya, this is a player Arsenal have been interested in for a long time, and despite the slightly atypical way Arsenal and Brentford structured the deal, Arsenal seem to be placing a pretty significant outlay on Raya. I don't think you spend around 30 million on a prime age goalkeeper you've been chasing for 3 years to sit on the bench for 50 games, even if Ramsdale started the first 4. Though I will be challenging it at some points during this video, that tradition is here to stay. We have a conundrum coming, like it or not. And of course, fans are concerned. Many feel this is a straight shootout for the number 1 shirt, and Ramsdale's a fan favourite, so they're anxious to know what will happen. So this video aims to answer a simple question. What is the right thing to do with our goalkeepers? To inform ourselves and begin to answer that, let's look at their overall performance according to the data in 2022-23. Goalkeeping data is notoriously tricky, but this is from John Harrison's goalkeeper.com. One of the leaders in this space, appearing on Sky, The Athletic and so much more, Ramsdale is seen as the 7th best in the league, aged 24 for most of last season. For the bonus content this week, I actually interviewed John Harrison and it was fascinating. It's all about how to assess goalkeepers, how to properly use goalkeeping data, his models and so much more. If you'd like to watch it, you can sign up as a member on this channel or you can sign up as a patron on a 7-day free trial. Links are in the description. As per goalkeeper.com, the goalkeepers are ranked by overall goalkeeper value. This is defined as how many goals a goalkeeper has been worth to their team against the mathematically average Premier League goalkeeper. More information can be found on goalkeeper.com. Ramsdale is comfortably the youngest keeper in the top category, worth 3.8 goals for Arsenal last season. Really encouraging. As we move forward, by the way, I want to make it absolutely clear what I believe. Ramsdale is and will be a top-class goalkeeper, and I have utmost respect for him as a player and as a person, especially after his incredible Players Tribune interview. There are many factors involved in assessing a goalkeeper, and one performance on the field or in a metric should always be taken in the broadest context possible. That said, let's look at Ramsdale's post-shot XG minus goals allowed per 90 metric to assess his shot stopping. Explainer for that metric available here, if needed, but it's a good one. Selecting the keeper who's played the most minutes for each club, here are the results. And it's not good reading for Arsenal fans. Ramsdale is at the worst in the league after 4 games. We obviously don't have Raya to compare to, so there you go. Now the first thing to say is, obviously, that is an extremely small sample size. And I also think it's massively skewed by that Fulham goal, but I think it's hard to make a case that this is something Ramsdale excels at over a wider sample size either, which is why I include it. It's a point of possible improvement. Looking at Ramsdale's Premier League rankings for post-shot XG over the past few years, against all the Premier League keepers who made an appearance per 90, minus goals allowed per 90, he was 12th in 22-23, 5th in 21-22, 18th with Sheffield in 2021, and 12th with Bournemouth in 19-20. Here's Raya's for comparison, though a smaller sample size as he spent less time in the league. There's some who'd argue that that data skews favourably towards goalkeepers in teams who face more shots. It's certainly a factor, I'm not denying that, but I think if you look at the data over time, that correlation is absolutely not a straight line. Last season, the top 5 performing keepers were from teams that faced the 13th, 3rd, 12th, 2nd and 4th most shots on target. Maybe there's a small correlation, but it's not a massive factor, skewing it, in my opinion. I've seen lots of people online questioning this data, and you can take issue with how the model works, collated by FBref and powered by Opta if you like. I don't have that information. But my question is, would you take issue with how the data is collected if it favoured a player we all, myself included, love? Post-shot XG takes in the quality of the shot, deflections, location of shot, lots of things. It's a really advanced metric. However, and I don't know about you, those data just don't line up with my view of Ramsdale's shot stopping. I think he's excellent, and he's been nowhere near the worst in the league for shot stopping on the eye test from that first 4 games, for example. I know Ben Shapiro would tell me facts don't care about my feelings, but last season I remember that Liverpool save, the saves against Tottenham home and away, the one against Villa. My feeling is that Ramsdale's got us out of a lot of tight spots, and at 25, he can only improve. Regardless, it's only one element of goalkeeping. What else can we measure? Something I do personally feel about Ramsdale, which I don't pretend is scientific or objective in any sense, is that we've lost something from him in the build-up. It all feels a bit simple. I remember when he first arrived, it felt like almost every game there was a moment where I went, wow, what a pass. That ball to Martinelli in the home game against City on New Year's Day, those balls into the midfield for Ødegaard, his fizzed balls into Aubameyang. The spectacular saves have continued, but I wonder if the distribution has gone stagnant. Or maybe even gone down a level. The closest I can get to putting that into objective terms with the data available to me as a fan is the goal probability added metric at Scott J. Willis on X. It's just one game, but looking at Andre Onana's goal probability added in the game at the Emirates the other week, he was the 6th most threatening player in the team, above Lissandro, Antony, not hard, Martial and more. Most of that from his passing, indicated by the dark blue. Now that's a game plan, of course, and a specific way of playing, but it shows what a keeper is capable of doing in this league as a way of approaching a game. Ramsdale, on the other hand, was lower than some of the subs. Same stories against Fulham and Forest, though a bit better against Palace. Do we, with Ramsdale, have the option to do that? Do we need it? Possibly to bait teams in a bit more and switch it up? That said, not every team needs their keeper to be Onana, and I think Ramsdale's lack of attack value added can be pretty decently explained by the fact that Ramsdale is a lot less involved in games now. As Arsenal play higher and higher up the pitch with more possession, teams spend less and less time pressing us into our box, and there's less space and less opportunities to play those Hollywood passes and be involved to create that attacking value. This season so far, Ramsdale is having 31.5 touches per 90, where in 21-22 he was having 39.6, almost a third more per game. Arsenal have had the least amount of goal kicks so far this season, have faced the second least amount of crosses, have conceded the equal third least amount of goals, and have had no penalties taken or free kick goals against us. Put simply, Ramsdale isn't busy, and I don't think he's regressed in his distribution to answer that from earlier, because he's not having as much opportunity to show us what he can do. I just think he's keeping it simple, operating at net neutral, which may be all he can be with the current goalkeeper role at Arsenal. But the question is, which is genuine and non-rhetorical, can we get something better in the team as it stands right now? Can we get someone who, without the game flowing through them maybe, adds attacking value even with 30 touches a game? I'm not saying we need Onana, or that dropping Onana into the system would work necessarily, but is there growth potential in that area? Lots of questions, none that I really had the answer to, but I just wonder if we'd seen Raya in those first 4 games, what we might have seen. In terms of mistakes, so far this season, it's early, but there's nothing for me. I think it's possible to make an argument he could have done better for the Pereira goal, but I think it's a bit harsh personally. He's caught out really because Pereira angles his body, and it looks like he's going to shoot to Ramsdale's left, so Aaron responds, but then he miskicks it. I think any keeper would have been caught out by that. And in terms of all-round play, I think he's been pretty good on set pieces. The Paulinho one was a marking error, and his passing's been fine in my view. Has he looked a little less confident, as some say? I don't know. I think we're at risk of microanalyzing, or diagnosing, as some do, in my view, disrespectfully, going beyond the limits of our information. I think the competition has us watching his every move, and some are reading into things a little too much. Maybe understandably, considering the nature and timing of Raya's arrival. The arrival. So, we return to our original question. What do we do now? If Ramsdale really is doing pretty okay, other than some bits here and there, which you'd probably expect from a 25-year-old goalkeeper, is that enough to drop him? Is it just fair game? There's a keeper who's further along in his development, and that's the game. Realistically, everything's up for debate. We all want the same thing, Arsenal to get better. And though it might be nice to say, well, Raya will take the cup games, at some point at least, the league question will be had. I really find it hard to believe that if Raya comes in and does well in the cup competitions, the fans who prefer Raya will sit back and say, yeah, Ramsdale can have the league, that's absolutely fine. And conversely, won't Aaron Ramsdale want to play in the Champions League and the cup competitions to fulfill a lifelong dream? Whatever way you slice it, there are and will be questions that rage on and on. But I may have a solution. It's a theory, I'm more than happy to be disproved, and time will tell. But I want to give it to you. I don't know if we're going to need to choose between them in the way that we currently think. Mikel constantly talks about the idea of different players for different games. He says, quote, "The game is becoming more specific. The role of each player is becoming more and more narrow." I can't imagine, with all the talk of plan A1, A2, A3, becoming more flexible, 2 players for every position, being more unpredictable, it all culminates in an Arsene Wenger-style cup keeper over here and a league keeper over there. I just can't. So I'm not sure it's about dropping. Isn't it going to be about selecting? Certain games call for certain players. Mikel says it. Stamford Bridge away, under pressure of losing his place with the crowd on him, where Chelsea are really only relying on breakaways. Is that the perfect game for Ramsdale? Versus Brighton at home, them high pressing us, where we need the goalkeeper to be the spare man in the build-up. Is that the perfect game for Raya? If we want those clip balls to play over a press towards the left, do we select Ramsdale? If we want those sidewinders into our 8s, do we select Raya? Long distribution to a target man, Ramsdale. Long throws out to the wingers to start breakaways, Raya. Every game is a different story, and every drive to London Colney is different. The immediate response will be, you need a number 1. But Why? The answer is usually a variation of because it's not been done before, or some appeal to the mental side of the game. But if the game is getting more specific in every position, why does that stop at the goalkeeper? I would argue it's never been tried before at the top level. And though it's a high-risk strategy, and if one of the keepers made a howler, that would be the most convenient narrative of all time, it could also be massively high reward. From a mental perspective, where I believe you might have to play a Kai Havertz, for example, through a period of bad form, I think Ramsdale is exactly the type of character who will want to play out of his skin to prove himself if he gets sat down for a game. And isn't that what we want? We talk about rhythm for players, but if a striker gets dropped then comes back the next game, we expect a top performance, train as close to game intensity as possible, then reap the rewards. Why isn't that the same for goalkeepers? Can you imagine a fired up Aaron Ramsdale going to Anfield, desperate to keep his place for the following game midweek away at the Bernabeu? That's when he's at his best. Is it sustainable long term? Possibly not. But let's not worry about the long term. If you'd asked me in 2020, I would have told you that Joe Willock had a higher ceiling than Bukayo Saka. Things change. The best man wins if indeed there becomes a best man. Plan long term, play short term. Can I see it sustaining for 1, maybe even 2 or 3 years? Why not? Injuries happen, loss of form happens, and either keeper may end up with 25 plus appearances apiece per season, time in the national side, and trophies. Other coaches get to rubber stamp ideas. De Zerbi's press, Pep's fullbacks, Klopp's early gegenpress. Why can't Mikel do something similar with his keepers? Whatever your opinion, I don't think this is outside the realm of possibility. How many times we sat here and said things like, White isn't a fullback, Ramsdale isn't at the level, Ballon d'Or nomination by the way, Saka's a left back, so on and so on and so on. Let's be open-minded. I think if this is indeed the plan, we should at least give it a chance. But regardless, let me know your thoughts about it down in the comments. I'm sure you will. For now, I want Ramsdale to keep his place in the league, and I want Raya to make his debut and prove his worth in an Arsenal shirt. But by the next international break, I wonder if we're going to be having a very different conversation.